I'm Dr. Erin Myers, and this is Leading with Intuition, a podcast for the Type A perfectionist woman who knows society needs a reboot and is capable of making it happen. We are redefining success so that we have a balance of energy where work-life integration creates happiness instead of anxiety. A balance of energy that allows the future generations of our society to know the meaning of acceptance without the pressure to conform and achieve. That's what this podcast is all about. So sit back, relax, make sure you follow, download, review, and let's begin. So I've had quite a few requests to continue with the quantum physics discussion because everybody wants to know what the other three components are to the quantum paradigm. So let's just quickly review the quantum paradigm. So what the quantum paradigm says is really, is there a way to harness our quantum potential? And we went through a little bit of why a paradigm shift is needed. And when paradigms change, the world changes with them. And all we need is 2% of the entire world to reach that tipping point where we can completely shift from this Newtonian paradigm to this quantum paradigm. And the way we do that is by retraining our old way of thinking and living away from that old Newtonian programming so that we can attune with this new reality of this quantum paradigm. So as a reminder, that Newtonian paradigm is determinism, separatism, reductionism, materialism. And man, if the last 2 years have not shown us the absolute brink of the Newtonian paradigm, I don't know what else will, right? That all it does is it encourages this separation. It fuels that ego and that greed so that we are all isolated and reduced to individual parts, functioning in this really linear, logical, clockwork way where everything needs to be predictable and controllable. And when it's not, then we reduce you even further to individual parts. And so what this does is it cuts us off from spirit and choice. Whereas the quantum paradigm, the four components of it are complementarity, contextual, conscious, and connected. And we talked about the complementary component of it last time that we talked about the quantum paradigm and quantum physics. And so today we are really going to focus more on the contextual, conscious, and connected components. And so if you have not listened to how quantum physics relates to meditation, please go back and listen to that. I think it will be really helpful for laying the foundation, but you should still be able to get a feel for the basics of this. You just may be a little bit confused about the complementary component that I'm just going to kind of breeze over because the complementary component really creates the foundation of the quantum paradigm. And we'll discuss that in a moment. So what the quantum paradigm says as a reminder is that the universe is participatory. Our choices, even our thoughts, they matter. And what that means is it puts power back into our hands where every single one of our choices matter to the entire universe. So do our thoughts. When we think a thought, the quantum paradigm says that it goes out into the universe. And if we do not act upon that thought, someone else who's vibrating at the same frequency will grab it and will act upon that thought. And so we need to think about that. All of our thoughts matter. All of our choices matter. So let's make sure that they're positive and inclusive and they're vibrating at a high frequency. And so when we reorient our way of thinking toward this view, we have an infinite amount of possibilities that open wide. And again, before I kind of move on, I want to make sure that I cite where I'm getting this information from. And it's from Dr. Teresa Bullard. She has the Teachings of the Mystery School docu-series, I guess you would call it, on Gaia. And so go and listen to that and watch that. So can we actually reprogram or rewire our perceptions after hundreds of years of this genetic and social conditioning? The answer is yes, absolutely. But it takes a combination of the correct concepts as well as daily practice to make this shift happen. But when enough of us make this shift, which I said, some research that I read a little bit ago said that 2% of the entire population of Earth is what we need. So when we make this shift ourselves, it becomes our duty then to shift from not only continuing to take care of ourselves, but to helping guide others to support this collective shift. And so complementarity, to remind us what this is it says it's really part of the uncertainty principle. It is impossible to precisely measure two observables that are tied together as complementary pairs. And so what do we mean by that? So for example, if we know a particle's position in space and its momentum through space, that's a complementary pair. But what the uncertainty principle is stating is that we cannot know a particle's position in space and also know its momentum through space. So if we know exactly where a particle is, then we won't be able to know anything about its momentum, and vice versa. So that's an example with movement. What does this have to do with me? If we know exactly where we are right now, we won't have total clarity on where we are going. However, it's so incredibly important for us to completely stand still so that we know exactly where we are. Because when we know exactly where we are, suddenly an infinite amount of possibilities as to where to go next opens up. Should we go forward, sideways, 360 degrees, up, down? Which way are we going to go? And you can think about this from all sorts of different perspectives. You have to stop and really reflect on where you are now at work as a leader to know which possibilities are open to us. Because if we don't stop and slow down and reflect on exactly where we are now, we aren't going to be able to slow down enough to realize all of the incredible possibilities that we have open. So let's think about that, because we are moving constantly in this life. And when we are moving constantly, our position keeps changing. And momentum is good in life, but it's also good to stop and reflect. And every time we feel some tension as we are moving forward, this is the best way to recognize that tension, realize that tension, hopefully solve that tension, and pick a new path forward. Okay, we're going to skip the other examples of complementarity that we discussed last time. So make sure we go back and we review that. What we're going to move on to now is contextual. So this is the second component of the quantum paradigm. And what this says is that measurement alters the state. So when we measure something, it alters the state. So if we go back to the wave particle duality example that I gave in the last podcast episode, where it says that light behaves as both a wave and a particle. So when scientists set up an experiment to see if light behaves as a wave, it does. And when scientists set up an experiment to see if light behaves as a particle, it behaves as a particle. So this means that there's duality in the particles and the waves of light, right? There's duality in light. It is both a particle and a wave, just depending on how we set up the experiment. And so when we look at this from a contextual standpoint, it means that the way that we measure something actually alters the state at which we experience it. So things are meaningful. We give meaning to things by the act of simply observing them. Just by observing them, we alter the state of their being. And the meaning we give depends on the context or the set of conditions we choose to go with, or the assumptions that we make. So the meaning emerges from the interaction or the synergy that occurs between the observer and what is being observed. So let's kind of break this down a little bit more. So does that mean we can give our own lives greater meaning? If we sit back and we be still for a moment and we just observe where we are now, and we reflect on the meaning of our life at this exact point, it alters the state of our being, and it alters the state of our life simply by reflecting. And so if we reflect on our lives in a positive way, then we will alter our state of being and our own lives in a positive way. We will give greater meaning to our lives. So, yes, the universe is participatory. We are co-creating in partnership with this universe through our observations and our choices. So this means that our consciousness plays a vital role in determining what manifests out of the quantum sea of possibilities that we suddenly have open to us when we pause and we're still for a moment. So the complementarity reminds us to pause so that we have access to those infinite sea of possibilities. And then the contextuality of the quantum paradigm states that we can alter our lives and our way of being simply by stopping, being still, and observing. But we need to make sure that we observe in a positive light, that everything is a learning lesson and a learning opportunity so that we can move forward and live with purpose. The third component of the quantum paradigm is consciousness. So is the universe conscious? Or is it an epiphenomenon of the brain? Is it a group of molecules working together in a physical system? Or is it more fundamental to our universe? Max Planck, who was with us from 1858 to 1947, once said, "I regard consciousness as fundamental. I regard matter as derivative from consciousness." So when you think about that, when this scientist who died in 1947 already had one of the most fundamental understandings of quantum physics, can you see how far we have come with quantum physics and the understanding of our brains and consciousness? Or do we not? Because it is such a paradigm shift that we haven't been able to hit that tipping point where we truly have that full grasp and understanding of the infinite possibilities and the fact that consciousness is what we should be grounded in as fundamental. So that matter, or the actual physical objects that surround us in life, are purely a derivative of consciousness. This matter sitting in front of me right now, this desk, this computer, this microphone, this is only as I perceive it. Someone else could perceive this matter as completely different than the way I perceive it. And that, therefore, is their reality. Whereas this perception of the matter in front of me is my own reality. Neither is wrong. They are solely our own realities purely because of the way that our consciousness has created and derived the matter. The Hermetica states that everything seen has been begotten because at some point it came to be seen. And that is an ancient text that already knew at that point in time. And this is why quantum physics circles back to these ancient religions and these ancient philosophies. These ancient philosophies and these ancient religions already understood this, that everything that is seen has only become purely because at some point in time, someone's consciousness saw it and turned it into a reality. The Hermetica also states that there is nothing in the cosmos that does not live. So when we think of that from this perspective, does matter itself have consciousness? Continuing with the Hermetica, life is not birth, but awareness. It is not until we become aware and create our own realities that life truly begins. And all are immortal, matter, life, spirit, soul, mind, of which every living thing is constituted. So this ancient text, this ancient philosophical text, the Hermetica, stated that everything is immortal because whether it's matter, life, spirit, soul, or mind, of every living thing, there is matter, life, spirit, soul, and mind. So what does this really mean? So if we go back to this concept of consciousness, is the universe conscious? Does everything that we perceive around us have some level of consciousness that allows us to create this reality? So we move from that consciousness to the fourth component of quantum physics, or the quantum paradigm, I should say, which is connected. So this is one of the most mind-boggling findings of quantum physics that intrigues and yet at the same time just totally baffles scientists. How do these quantum systems meet and interact and then forevermore become entangled? So what this is saying is that everything that has ever met and interacted is forever more entangled. The closer in time that interaction has occurred, the more entangled it is. But if we think about from a scientific perspective, the Big Bang Theory, everything came from one. And if we think about it from a biblical perspective, everything came from God. And so if everything came from a single point of origin, regardless of which perspective you're looking at, then we are always forever more entangled because we were created from exactly the same thing. So everything is no longer individual. Everything is to some degree a single entity. Even if the components are on opposite ends of this universe, somehow information is being communicated instantaneously between these components, regardless of how much time and space is between them. It's crazy, and it absolutely baffles quantum physicists. It just does. So Michio Kaku, who's a theoretical physicist, futurist, and author, states that it is impossible to completely separate ourselves from the oneness of the universe. And this is why. Because at some point, we were all entangled. So what does all of this have to do with me, right? So let's go back to that major question, which you'll notice we talked about a lot in the first episode on quantum physics. But what this has to do with us is that we're all entangled with every particle we have ever interacted with, including other people and the things that they have interacted with, etc. So it's this intricate web of interaction. And so if the universe truly did start with the Big Bang, or if the universe truly started with God, it still means that every single particle has been entangled from the very beginning. And so evidence suggests that a kind of connectedness extends not just to quantum objects, but it is found in evolutionary biology, consciousness studies, and cosmology. So what does this connectedness really mean to my own reality? Well, this concept of non-local coherence, meaning this interaction between particles regardless of time and space, this is a fundamental aspect of our reality. If this truly is accurate, if this component of quantum physics and this quantum paradigm is accurate, then beyond energy and matter, there's information intrinsic in the universe that we all have access to. And going back to Hermes, not the Hermetica this time, but the Emerald Tablet, which the Hermetica ultimately came from, he states that true without error, certain and most true, that which is above is as that which is below, and that which is below is as that which is above, for performing the miracles of the one thing. And as all things were from one by the meditation of one, so from the one thing come all things by adaptation. So what does that even mean? So what it's saying, that which is above is that which is below. I'm sure we have all heard that statement before, but everything in this universe is connected in some way. So everything that is above is also connected to that which is below. And that which is above for performing the miracles of one thing, meaning the miracles of God or the miracles of the universe, then from the one, by the meditation of one, meaning when we stop and meditate and connect with the universe, God, consciousness, community, whatever you want to call it, spirit, collective, then from that one thing, God, universe, spirit, collective, come all things. So we have access to everything when we simply stop and meditate, when we pause and we are still. So see how all of this comes full circle to just continue to emphasize the fact that when we pause and are still, we have access to all possibilities, to all information, to all potential energy. And John Wheeler, who's a theoretical physicist that lived from 1911 to 2008, stated that useful as it is under everyday circumstances to say that the world exists out there, quote unquote, independent of us, that view can no longer be upheld. We are all the same. And with that, we are going to leave this and just realize that when we pause, we are connected and we have infinite possibilities open to us. And that every word, thought, action that we take creates a ripple in the universe, because we are all connected as one. Thank you so much. I hope that helped give you some additional perspective and depth on this concept of quantum physics and the reason why meditation is so important. So thank you very much for listening. Please like, review, and I hope to have you on the next episode.